to connecting with many of you this week. I'll start with a very brief introduction. My name is Renelle David. I'm a senior sales executive with FIS. You may not have heard of us, as the market tends to know us by the names of our solutions, but we are a Fortune 500 global tech company, and many of you may remember the WorldPay acquisition we did last year. I'm based out of the Canary Wharf office in London. I'm responsible for the UK and Irish enterprise markets, and I work with treasurers and payment leaders to achieve their financial transformation objectives through the use of FIS's technology and services. I also sit on as a member of the Global Community Council for the Women in Payments Network, and I also am an activator in the CEO venture community. So today I plan to cover the topic of corporate innovation. Why, is it important? How do you go about creating a culture of innovation? And I'll also share with you some examples along the way. So I hope you find this interesting. So let's tackle the first point. Why is innovation important? Many of you will recall back in 2007, when Nokia and BlackBerry were the dominant players in the mobile phone market. Nokia with its 40% market share, and BlackBerry, which was a preferred choice if you were in business. But within 5 years, they would be swept aside by the iPhone. Their leaders had completely failed to anticipate the innovation that someone like Steve Jobs had been working on for several years. There are other stories like that. Take Blockbuster, who filed for bankruptcy after achieving $6 billion in revenue. The realization for them came too late. And it couldn't compete with the likes of Netflix and other companies offering streaming and video on demand services. So industries such as financial services, healthcare, travel are all seeing a pronounced shift in its business models, partly as a result of disruptors such as Airbnb and Uber. So what are we seeing? We're seeing that corporate longevity is on the decline. I came across an interesting fact which I wanted to share with you today. In the 1960s, a typical S&P 500 company was estimated to last more than 60 years. These days, would you believe the average lifespan is just 18 years? This really puts things into perspective. The world today is so fast-paced, and companies need to stay relevant in order to survive. And they need to adapt quickly to changing markets and shifting consumer behaviors if they really want to thrive. Because of this, it is increasingly important for businesses to prioritize innovation. Studies have shown that firms that are investing in innovation are growing at a much faster rate than firms that are not. And the way you spend your innovation dollars is even more important than how many of those dollars you spend. The question is, can you afford not to? Sometimes, instead of looking at the cost of innovation, business teams should be estimating the price tag for inaction. So let's talk about creating a culture of innovation. If you are a business leader, the implications are clear. Ask yourself, what can my team and I do to cultivate a culture of innovation? What can we do to promote experimentation and the generation of new ideas? This needs to happen at every level of the business. Innovation is, the mantra of this era, whether we are ready for it or not. Some companies are doing it really well, which we can take a few lessons away from. BCG, known as the Boston Consulting Group, ranks the 50 most innovative companies each year. And, they've been doing this since 2005. Only 8 companies have appeared on the list every single year. It may come as no surprise to hear that their names such as Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, Samsung, and IBM, they have all become serial innovators, which is pretty impressive. But that didn't happen by accident. Those companies made an intentional decision and investments to create company cultures that foster creativity and agility. they have managed to hardwire it into their DNA. There are other examples of companies that are doing the same, and 3M is one of them. They placed a heavy emphasis on R&D, and they also allowed staff to spend 50% of their time to explore new ideas. So they organize internal innovation fairs where different labs can showcase their technologies, and people, from other business units can come in and explore what's relevant for their own product lines. Google has created a similar mechanism on its company intranet. Any Googler can post an idea they're excited about and also where they may need help. Excuse me. Any colleague can see these queries and jump in to help if they can. What these companies have really done is learn to harness the power of innovation. So a PWC benchmark study shows that innovative companies aren't necessarily going it alone. They are pushing the boundaries of innovation both inside and outside their organizations by breaking down traditional barriers, tapping into a much wider ecosystem for ideas, insights, talent, and technology. And most importantly, they're incorporating the customer throughout that innovation process. So I'll talk a little bit about FIS. As an organization, it's really mobilized on these fronts as well. We see it as critical to our growth, as well as a commitment to our clients to provide solutions that are relevant and will position them for success. So typically, the fintech world is divided into two spheres. You have your consumer-facing companies that offer digital tools to improve the way individuals borrow, pay, or invest. And then you have companies that focus on helping organizations to streamline their operations behind the scenes. I think FIS has successfully operated across these areas for a number of years. Its strategy has been to nurture a growing ecosystem of innovators, both within and outside the company. And I'll share some examples, which I think will be interesting for you as you embark on your own innovation journeys. I will say, though, that this is not just vaporware, but real work that goes on in these initiatives. So I'll kick off with, FIS's FinTech Accelerator Program. This is in its fifth year now, which is really focused on identifying and fostering innovation through fintech startups. They tend to be companies with potential technologies that want to partner with or sell to financial institutions that will enable them to innovate, scale, and succeed. We also have 5 innovation labs that we run in key cities around the world, which are great catalysts for accelerated growth. I talked previously about companies tapping into a much wider ecosystem for ideas and insights and talent. An increasing number of companies are creating innovation labs to generate these new ideas and opportunities by innovating faster, smarter, but also cheaper. So we also host an annual competition called Innovate in 48. It's a really interesting concept and has probably been in play for the past 7 years. We recognize that people are our most important assets. Our innovation starts with them, and their engagement is really critical to our success as a business. So what happens is that staff, tend to form teams, and they have 48 hours to create and code uninterrupted, and strive, I guess, to win the coveted trophy and the bragging rights that go with it. And the innovation is always linked to enhancing FIS products so that customers can, ultimately benefit. I think that's really important to remember. In today's audience, I know, that we have many founders attending this week. And you'll be interested to know that in April this year, FIS announced a newly created corporate venture investment division called FIS Ventures. It has a target to invest $150 million in early to growth stage fintech startups over the next 3 years. The focus will be on emerging technology, and not only will FIS make a capital investment, but FIS Ventures will actively partner with these companies, giving them access to FIS's global reach and scale, but also our expertise, our customers, our channel partners to really, help them fulfill their growth ambitions. So moving on, in my role at FIS, I've, had the real privilege of supporting some very large corporate clients to transform their treasury and payment operations through the use of technology. So a recent example of this is the story of Baker Hughes. It's one of the world's largest oilfield services companies. Their treasury transformation journey started back in 2017 when they merged with GE's oil and gas business. The combined company, operates in about 120 countries and generates over 20 billion in US dollars in revenue. So fast forwarded to a year later, and the company was looking to start its own journey to become standalone from GE, as GE was spinning off quite a few of its various businesses. And to top it off, it had less than 2 years to build its own treasury function, which included a whole new organization, processes, infrastructure. It was a mammoth task, a very challenging task. And the team focused the project around 3 key design principles. They wanted a simplified and consistent global delivery model. They wanted to position the treasury function as a value-generating support function, where all transactional activities were migrated to processing centers of excellence. And lastly, the company decided to adopt some leading market practices and cutting-edge and emerging technologies, such as data analytics and RPA. So key to the success of this project, was working with the right technology partner. And, we were thrilled when Baker Hughes selected FIS to design and build the company's treasury technology stack around our flagship quantum treasury management system, together with our hosting and managed services. So I'm very proud to say that the entire process from start to finish took less than 14 months. And the final solution enabled Baker Hughes' team to manage the trade life cycle of high volume financial transactions and ensure real-time cash visibility of 2,000 bank accounts globally. It was also able to support the funding and liquidity processes to meet business critical activities. So in conjunction with this, FIS's Trax payment solution was also selected, implemented and rolled out in multiple waves at a record speed of 18 months. The payment factory is today interfacing with multiple internal systems. So can you imagine, ERPs that have been acquired over the years, and there were about 10 of them, payroll vendors, trade payable systems, and this was handling more than 2 million payments annually, executed by about 1,000 users worldwide. So the scale of this project is just, mind-boggling when you think of it. The result at the end of the implementation was an entire treasury environment that was interconnected, feeding one another with business critical information, and it allowed the users across treasury and finance functions to focus on those value-added activities, that was the objective right from the outset. And it enabled the company to drive strategic decisions through business intelligence and treasury data analytics. It's really important to note that it will also allow the company to exit its TSA, its transition services agreements, and the associated costs with its former parent much earlier than expected. As a result of this, I'm proud to say that, Baker Hughes since achieved the highly commended Top Treasury Team category award at Adam Smith's, and it was a really, really proud moment for them and for us, and a nice way to see all the hard work rewarded. Another interesting story is one of the global luxury goods maker, LVMH, a name everyone probably will recognize. They entered into a collaboration with FIS, with SWIFT, and 6 of its partner banks as part of the SWIFT GPI for Corporates pilot project. The aim was to remove delays, uncertainty, and lack of visibility from the cross-border payments that it made across the company. It was an extension and a logical one of the payment centralization and automation project that they had started back in 2010 with the FIS Trax payment solution. The result is that today, LVMH relies on Trax to automatically assign a unique transaction reference to each payment for easy tracking, reconciliation, and reporting. The Trax dashboard allows LVMH's users to track payments easily without the need to raise queries with the banks, which previously could take days or longer to resolve. Something which many of you may be able to relate to. By bringing greater transparency to the status and settlement of its cross-border payments, LVMH benefits from greater predictability and accountability within its supply chain. Further to that, the Trax and Swift GPI integration is really helping the company to better manage its commercial relationships, reduce the friction that sometimes that can cause, and control costs as it brings its luxury goods to market. So Swift GPI is, potentially transformative industry development, but it is not taking place in isolation. APIs offer the potential to move towards managing cash, liquidity, risk in real time. We are working in partnership with LVMH to bring clarity and confidence to cross-border payments and are exploring the potential for future API integrations. I guess that leads us quite nicely to other market trends that we are seeing. I was speaking to a client the other day and he shared an interesting question. Who do you think is responsible for digital transformation today? Is it the CTO, CIO, or COVID? Now, I had to smile when I heard that, but it's a valid point. COVID has shone a spotlight on cloud services, especially so in the case of corporations and financial institutions that have traditionally run their tech on-prem in city center locations. When teams are working face-to-face, it's a little easier to react when things get off track. But when everyone is remote, it requires much more robust planning. The lockdowns as a result of COVID and the significant move to remote working has accelerated that shift to the cloud as companies seek to mitigate risk, whilst at the same time, they want to work with vendors that will provide a highly secure environment, enable them to be able to scale up as business demands, and also deploy new services. But at the same time, addressing those data sovereignty needs that will arise. There has been a huge increase in companies moving to the cloud. And in today's world, it really is quite difficult to ignore the unquestionable value that it delivers. So let's do a quick recap. I've touched on why we need to innovate, and more importantly, the cost of doing nothing. We've seen the value of having a culture of innovation, with some companies setting the pace in this area. We've also seen how vendors and clients alike are embracing technology to transform their businesses, and more importantly, create financial benefits. We now need to take it down to the human level. Yes, that's you and me. As individuals, we owe it to ourselves to create ongoing learning expeditions by stepping out of what we know to get exposure to diverse thinking, creativity, and different ways of doing things. It means creating a learning path, getting involved in stretch projects, having cross-functional mobility in a company. Other times you have to venture outside the company, expand your network, build new expertise, and really unleash your curiosity. To quote Jeffrey James, who's the editor at Inc.com, Innovation doesn't occur automatically. It only happens when the individuals in an organization are growing and changing, taking on new challenges, learning new skills, entertaining new ideas. Innovation is thus the result of personal growth. I challenge you all to make personal development an innovation project. So that brings us to the end of our time together. Thanks very much to all the attendees as well as to Digital Online for the opportunity to connect and share. I really appreciate your time and your focus. Please feel free to email me with with any questions you may have. And thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.